I am again thankful to all news media outlets for letting me use their contents. I greatly appreciate that. I am available 24/7 if they need any assistance. Now go to the headlines. Hi and very warm welcome at Amir Shackle. 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Following news headlines have been reported by world major English news channels and news agencies. So please watch it.
Tonight, breaking news, the catastrophic earthquake. Thailand's capital rocked. The images of buildings crumbling, sending people running for their lives. Still so many trapped. The 7.7 magnitude quake likely killing hundreds, and the toll expected to climb. We talked to the American medical student who jumped into action. Also breaking tonight, markets tumbling on renewed fears of inflation, plus President Trump's auto tariffs poised to kick in as Canada says it will fight back in an escalating trade war. Vice President J.D. Vance in Greenland, his message to the people of the Danish territory about why they would be better off under U.S. protection. The growing fires in the east and the deadly floods in Texas. 3 dead there and hundreds rescued. In South Carolina, the Table Rock fire, now the highest priority blaze in the country. 10,000 acres burned and no containment. We're on the fire line. And with the nation's capital hitting peak cherry blossom season, our Hallie Jackson with the good news update on everyone's favorite woe-begotten tree. This is NBC Nightly News with... Tonight, breaking news. The soaring death toll in the massive earthquake across Southeast Asia. Buildings collapsing. The frantic search for the missing. Here at home, deadly floods and wildfires, and the major cross-country storm. First, the quake devastation throughout Southeast Asia, stretching hundreds of miles. An entire 34-story building in Bangkok crashing to the ground. People fleeing for their lives as a cloud of dust and debris fills the air. More than 100 construction workers believed trapped. The sheer force of this massive quake reaching as far away as southern China. Debris from a building raining down. The desperate effort to find survivors. A young boy pulled from the rubble. Water from a rooftop pool spilling down hundreds of feet to the streets. Our Britt Clennett on the scene in Bangkok tonight. Here at home, the deadly floods in Texas. Up to 18 inches of rain in some places. Hundreds of water rescues. And in the Carolinas, the complete opposite. Red flag warnings as wildfires explode. And our weather team timing out this weekend's massive cross-country storm. The frigid response in Greenland after President Trump declares we have to have the island. Vice President Vance traveling there to make the case. What he said when asked if the U.S. military will take Greenland by force. Terry Moran from Greenland, and what he's hearing from the people who live there. Stocks plunge on Wall Street amid uncertainty over President Trump's tariffs as the president and Canada's new prime minister hold a high-stakes phone call. The urgent manhunt here in New York tonight for 2 men who police say carved a swastika into a Cybertruck. Elon Musk vowing to target those responsible for attacks on Tesla ahead of calls for a nationwide day of protest against the car company. King Charles appears in public 1 day after a brief hospital stay, the latest on his condition. And America Strong tonight, the heartwarming story behind this high school band and a now viral moment of joy. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York. On this Friday night, a critical first phone call between the Prime Minister and the President. We had a very constructive discussion. Donald Trump's stark shift in tone and what their call accomplished. A powerful earthquake pummels Myanmar and ripples across Southeast Asia. Hear from a Canadian caught in the chaos. Dissing Denmark.
You have not done a good job by the people of Greenland.
The frosty reception for the U.S. Vice President on a trip to the Danish territory. Plus, hitting a high note.
We've lost a lot of our understanding about how tied together we are.
The Canadian singer-songwriter awarded for her activism. Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple. Good evening.
death toll rises to more than 1,000 people after a powerful earthquake rocks Myanmar and Thailand. The Prime Minister kickstarts his campaign in Queensland, putting Medicare and jobs at the top of the agenda.
Part of my government's agenda is a future made in Australia.
Meanwhile, the opposition leader puts focus on the economy, accusing Labor of broken promises.
Who do you trust to manage the economy? Who do you trust to keep our country safe in uncertain times?
And the pilot critically injured in an air show in Victoria, identified as an aviation veteran. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Melissa McKay. The death toll in Myanmar.
Welcome back to the programme. You're watching Daybreak on France 24. My name's Peter O'Brien. These are the headlines. More than 1,000 people lose their lives in a massive earthquake which hit Mandalay in Myanmar. Buildings have collapsed as far away as Bangkok. In Greenland, JD Vance says Denmark is doing a bad job, while the territory resists America's push to acquire it. And Turkey cracks down harder, arresting journalists and the lawyer of opposition leader Ekrem İmamoğlu, who's already in detention.
This is Asia Now.
It's 2 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 11:30 New Delhi, 1 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Genevieve Wu. At this hour, rescue efforts underway as Myanmar's earthquake death toll jumps past 1,000. More than 2,000 have been reported injured. Around 100 people remain missing in Thailand's capital after a 33-story building under construction collapsed. Firefighters in South Korea redeployed after wildfires reignited the country's southeast. 30 people have been killed over the past week, with the fast-moving infernos causing widespread destruction. U.S. Defense Chief Pete Hegseth in Japan as the Trump administration seeks to reaffirm its commitment to Indo-Pacific allies.
Hello, a very good morning. It's 6 o'clock. Coming up on the show, more than 1,000 people are confirmed dead in yesterday's deadly earthquake.
Plus, copyright and artificial intelligence, two of the biggest tech firms, are under fire again this week.
And in sport, Sheffield United close in on a Premier League return as they go top of the Championship after their 3-1 win over Coventry.
It's Saturday, the 29th of March. Over 1,000 people are killed in Myanmar, 8 in Thailand, as emergency workers rush to rescue survivors there. The US Vice President hits out at Denmark during a visit to Greenland, the Arctic island which President Trump says the USA needs. And reports a landmark workers' rights bill could be watered down in the government's pursuit of economic growth.
Novak Djokovic closes in on his 100th career title as he books his place in the final of the Miami Open.
Hello, very good morning. Thanks for joining us here on Sky News Breakfast.
Very good evening to you. The top story tonight. Rescue teams are racing to find survivors after a powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck central Myanmar, killing, we now know, at least 144 people. Hundreds more are injured and entire buildings have collapsed, with neighbouring Thailand also hit by the tremors. In Bangkok, an unfinished high-rise building crumbled, leaving 6 people dead and around 100 construction workers missing. Drones, sniffer dogs and diggers are now scouring the rubble for signs of life. With Myanmar under military rule since a coup in 2021, reliable information at this stage remains scarce. Here, the head of the government's counter-terror programme, Prevent, has stepped down today after a review criticised failures in the case of Southport killer Axel Rudakabana. Michael Stewart is understood to have left following findings that Prevent closed the case too early, despite multiple warnings and police calls. The report also said Rudakabana showed a real interest in terrorism, including researching school shootings. It also flagged missed chances to escalate his case to a more intensive stage of intervention. The Home Secretary has now announced a public inquiry into any missed opportunities to stop him. King Charles was seen in public today for the first time since a brief hospital stay linked to a temporary side effect from his cancer treatment. He was spotted waving to crowds earlier as he left Clarence House, heading for Highgrove for the weekend. The King cancelled a visit to Birmingham, though, and meetings with ambassadors on medical advice, but is said to be feeling better. The palace described it as a minor bump in the road and says he hopes to resume duties next week. In other news, controversial sentencing rules that sparked a two-tier justice row are staying in place. The Sentencing Council's rejected pressure from the Justice Secretary to scrap guidance, letting judges consider ethnicity when punishing offenders. Well, speaking to us here on GB News earlier today, the Prime Minister said that advice should be changed. Here's what he had to say to our political editor, Chris Hope.
Well, I'm disappointed in this response, and the Lord Chancellor is obviously continuing to engage on this, and we're considering our response. All options are on the table, but I am disappointed at this outcome, and now we'll have to consider what we do as a result.
And W.H. Smith is vanishing from the high street after more than 2 centuries, as all of its 480 shops are snapped up in a £76 million deal. They'll be rebranded as T.G. Jones, with 5,000 staff moving to its new owners. W.H. Smith isn't disappearing completely, though. It's keeping its airport and train station branches open, but for town centres, it is the end of the road. After 230 years, the W.H. Smith sign is finally coming down. Terrible news. Those are the latest headlines. Plenty more still to come right here with Headliners.
Thank you, Sam, and hello and welcome to Headliners, where we give you the best of tomorrow's newspapers with the best of today's comedians. First things first, let's see what the papers have in store for us on today's show. The Daily Mail leads with, "They're making April Fools of us." The Eye has, "Reeves' plan for UK almost as unpopular as Truss budget." The Times has, "Police arrest parents for complaining about school." The Independent leads with, 30 million air passengers to be hit by worst delays for 25 years. The Daily Express has, "Hundreds feared dead in quake horror." And the Star has, "Hell on Earth." Jonathan, let's have a closer look at tomorrow.
Africa News. The news. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Friday alerted the press to what he is calling a dramatic and dire situation in South Sudan. There has been a rise of violent clashes impacting the civilians of South Sudan, and Wednesday night, the first Vice President Riek Machar was detained under house arrest, raising political tensions.
To the leaders of that country, I say, end the politics of confrontation. Release detained military and civilian officials now.
From Sudan in 2011. The Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has hit out at U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Thursday, following the American official visit to neighboring Guyana. During Rubio's visit, he vowed that the United States will respond forcefully if Venezuela attacks Guyana amid an ongoing territorial dispute that includes massive oil and gas reserves.
Amenazando a Venezuela desde
Rubio comes out threatening Venezuela from Guyana. Venezuela can't be threatened by anyone because this is the homeland of liberators. This is the homeland of Bolivar. Venezuelan gang. Former Barcelona player Dani Alves won his appeal against a sexual assault conviction as a Spanish court overturned the ruling. Alves was found guilty in February 2024 of raping a woman in a nightclub in December 2022 and sentenced to 4 years, 6 months in prison. The former Brazilian Barcelona defender denied wrongdoing during the 3-day trial. That court ruled Friday that there was insufficient evidence to rule out Alves' presumption of innocence. The Alves trial was the first high-profile case since Spain overhauled its laws in 2022 to make consent central to defining a sex crime in response to an upswell of protests after a gang rape case during the San Fermin bull running festival in Pamplona in 2016. Paul Pogba is already making waves in the transfer market. Olympique de Marseille admit it considered signing him this winter, but despite the end of his doping suspension, Pogba did not join the team in January. Since March 11, the midfielder has been eligible to play after serving his doping suspension. Pogba tested positive for testosterone in August 2023, and the former Juventus midfielder was handed the maximum punishment by Italy's anti-doping court. But the judges cut Pogba's ban as they acknowledged a lack of intent and said his positive test was the result of erroneous taking a supplement prescribed to him by a medical doctor in Florida.
Tonight, a significant first step in repairing Canada-US ties. The long-awaited call between the Prime Minister and the President.
The call was both cordial and focused on making progress.
I've always loved Canada, and we had a very good conversation with the Prime Minister.
What triggered a softened stance from Donald Trump, and will Canada be spared from steep tariffs? Also breaking down the policy pledges in the race to Parliament Hill.
A mass trafficker of these drugs is a mass murderer. Banning corporations from buying affordable homes.
How the tidal wave of tariffs could hit boat builders. Utter devastation the moment a massive earthquake shook Thailand and Myanmar. Plus, on historic cities' hopes for the future. Why threats from the past may be shaping voter priorities in Quebec City.
CTV National News with Heather Buck.
Congresswoman Anna Paulina Loina joins me now. You are so young, Congresswoman, that I'm going to ask you how old you are. How old are you?
I'm 35.
All right, so you're incredibly young, you're 35, and you see this new generation coming up. Do you understand how important this is? The president does.
Yeah, most certainly. In fact, Jesse, it's interesting that you're bringing that up. I'm currently working on something that would allow new parents and specifically female members of Congress to vote by proxy when they're recovering from childbirth. So look, we need a younger Congress. We are currently seeing right now that the American people want to have young representation. We have to carry the torch. And it means bringing some of these institutional changes that I believe will be better for the American people in the long run.
And if you're not growing, and that's why Greenland is necessary. Do you have colleagues in the House that are against taking Greenland?
No, I don't think so. Well, actually, I take that back. I think that there's been some murmurs of people that think that it might just be messaging, but I would actually argue from a strategic standpoint, Jesse, that would actually be a great location for us. Not to mention, from what I gather, the people of Greenland are very much supportive of becoming potentially a U.S. territory, and so I'm supportive of it. Why would we not want to expand message people that are the American pro ideology?
That important. People don't usually get it.
Well, as of right now, specifically in the 70s, when big corporations started sending industry overseas, what ultimately ended up happening is it actually hurt us back home. A lot of jobs ended up going down. We obviously lost our steel industry. And so when the president talks about reciprocal tariffs, it's important for people to realize that's actually a very good negotiating tool as well. What ends up happening is those countries no longer want to, for example, like China, put 100% tariff on product if we are charging them then the same. And so it actually will help in the long run to not just bring costs down for the American people, but also manufacturing back to the United States. I've actually been a huge advocate for the president's perspective on this idea.
Good. And we're here.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Bennett. Amza Vaz is away. On the NewsHour tonight,
A powerful earthquake in Myanmar and Thailand turns buildings to rubble and causes numerous deaths and injuries. What we know and don't know about the military campaign in Yemen that was discussed in the Signal chat in which Trump officials are touting as highly successful. And we hear from people who entered the country legally but have now been targeted in the Trump administration's immigration crackdown.
I feel hunted and persecuted. And it seems like the president, the executive, has taken on these law enforcement agencies as his own personal police.
We have to have England. It's not a question of we can't.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening, I'm John Dickerson.
I'm Maurice Dubois.
It's not easy being Greenland.
Not when the leader of the most powerful nation on earth says he wants to take you over. The president told Congress earlier this month he believes it'll happen one way or another.
And today he said we have to have it. His vice president was in Greenland today on something of a scouting mission.
But Greenlanders, there are about 57,000, are making clear they don't want to be a part of the United States. 4 political parties opposed to a U.S. takeover formed a ruling coalition yesterday in Greenland's parliament.
Holly Williams is in Nuuk, Greenland's capital, and Holly, the president said he wants Greenland one way or the other, but it seems like at least one way is off the table.
Good evening. For months now, President Trump has been talking tough about taking control of Greenland as U.S. territory. But today, Vice President Vance used a much more conciliatory tone, saying, quote, "We do not think military force is ever going to be necessary."
The Bidufik Space Base is America's northernmost military outpost. The Vice President used his brief visit there today to play up how Russia and China could threaten Arctic security.
A lot of people are making a play. We know that America cares about the security of this island.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Have a good life. Bye-bye.